Hello, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants Radio. I'm Nick Smith, joined tonight in studio with Abigail Olaya. And we're going to be talking tonight about the secret to creating the life of your dreams. And if you haven't subscribed to the Tribe of Giants or Wake Up with Giants Radio, you can do that on YouTube. That's where all of our episodes are. And tonight, we're just going to dive in and really just have a conversation around the secret to creating your life the way you want it. And so a lot of us have dreams. We have visions of where we want to go, but we don't really know how to get there. I mean, we try and change things. Abigail, you might help me with this. We try and change things and we end up doing the same things so similarly that we don't change anything. We just end up doing the same things over and over again. And so as we dive into your method, what I really want to talk about is the history of it and where it came from and how this originated, if we can do that. So I'm going to turn the microphone over to you to lead into this conversation, if that works.
Yeah, so just thinking about what you said right now, I think of it as like most people think that in order to create the life of your dreams, it occurs out here. And so it's like work harder, go out and do more stuff. It's in the doing, when the truth is it's really an inside job, and that's where it starts. And so if I think back, like if I look at where my life is right now, and I would say that I have the life of my dreams. I think about like when I was very young. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and my dad was the primary breadwinner of the household, and so he was an engineer and out working. And I remember being conflicted at an early age of I wanted to do the things that my mom was, like the active mother or parent in the classroom and be there to pick us up and take us to school. And at the same time, I also felt a drive and a need for wanting to have a career and to create something of my own. And that carried with me for into my early 20s. When I did start my career, I remember still being conflicted with that. And I had a conversation with another mom that was a few years older than me. We weren't even family planning at that time, but it was something that was always on my mind. And so with that, I was able to really get that conversation that I had with her. She helped me open up a new perspective. And she was like, no, by having kids, because I thought that if I had kids, then I'd say goodbye to the career. And she helped me reframe that and see it as a way, like she's like, no, by me having kids, I work that much harder for them. And I was like, oh, like that's a new way of seeing things. And so I have a 7-step overall message, that 7 steps to the message of being able to create the life of your dreams. And the first one is really getting clear and knowing what you want. And where that plays out in my story is that I had that nudge when I was little. I felt it when I was older. And so if I look at like right now, if I looked at it and I said, okay, well, how did I create the life that I want? Well, I went and started a business. Well, I did this. But if I go deeper into like, they say the 5 whys. Well, why did I do that? Why did I do that? Why did I do that? Because at an early age, and I didn't know it at the time, but I was really clear on this is what I wanted. So when I was in my career and I started gaining momentum in it, it was hard for me to be able to like, oh, but I'm going to have to give this up one day because I still wanted to be a mom.
Yeah. So when you get into the 5 whys and talking about that, so what do you want? Um, when you're doing whatever you're doing, whatever that is for anybody that's listening or watching this, um, a lot of times it's hard to see beyond what is. And so
Mhm.
knowing what you want and diving into the 5 whys or even beyond that, how would you suggest that somebody gets clear on what they want? What if they're in something, but they know they want to change, but they're not certain as far as what that might be? How do they navigate that?
Well, I think it starts with ultimately, what do I want? And then a lot of people say, like, well, I want to be earning X dollars of money. Well, why? It starts with the why. Why do you want that? Well, because I want freedom. Well, why do you want that? Well, because I want to be able to take my kids to school, or I want to be able to create my own thing, or I want to be able to really have an impact in the world. Well, why do you want that? And it keeps driving it down. So whatever it is that they're starting with, that they think that is what they want right now, I would say start asking the whys. And when you start asking the whys, like it just starts coming. And then
Okay.
you get down to and it could be more than 5, but it's generally 5 to 7. And you'll know when you're there because it'll move you. You'll feel it.
Okay, so you'll feel emotions around it. Is that what
Yeah,
you mean?
you'll feel it hit like, oh, that's really what I want, or something rise up into it, that it's moving.
Yeah, okay, okay.
And
So, really, you've gotta slow down enough to ask those questions because, until then, you're just kinda doing the routine.
Yeah, it is just doing the routine because if you just stay on the top one, a lot of what I work with people on, they're like, I want a certain income. I want a certain this. I want this lifestyle, right? But they
Right.
think it's the lifestyle they want as based off the money. And it's not really that. And so it's like slowing it down to be like, oh, this is truly what I want. I want this lifestyle to be able to travel. I want this. What is that lifestyle, right? Being able to slow it, like you said, down enough
Yeah, yeah.
to have it. And then the second part of that is being able to like give ourselves permission and allow ourselves to want that.
Okay. Yeah, because we often don't do that, right? It's not okay for me to think that way or to imagine or dream because at some point in our childhood, we gave that up, right? Or
Well,
during development or whenever. Go ahead.
yes,
Yeah,
or society's giving it back to us right now, right? Like,
yeah,
who are you to do both of these? Or who, like, what if you fail? What if you this? What if you that? Or you can't?
right,
There's a lot of things out there that are pressing on it, and it's like, no, I really want this because I want it.
right.
And even if somebody did really want whatever that income is, it's like, then there's the negativity around like somebody making whatever dollar amount, right? Whether it's high or low. Like, why do
Okay.
you only want so much, or why do you want so high? It's being able to allow ourselves, because that's what's going to make us happy, to really sit into that.
Yeah, I mean, I could imagine we would feel challenged if somebody were to say, "Well, that's too little," or "That's too high. Who are you to do that?" One way or the other. We would probably feel challenged, and it's in that challenging that we would maybe shut down, maybe not create what we're capable of. I
Yeah.
mean, what comes up as you hear that? Is there somewhere else you would take that?
Well, then I would go into to finding out what is your why. Because
Okay,
if you get clear, that's actually the second step. So if you get
okay,
clear on what your why is, the why will carry you through on any. It'll be your conviction. It'll carry you through any naysayers, any critics, any challenges. So like my why is starting a business and off of $15,000 and in the recession. That was a challenge in itself. Like, there were so many challenges there, but my why wasn't to start a business to gain X dollars. It wasn't to just go and do a business. It was because I was creating a lifestyle of freedom that would ultimately allow me to make choices for to be there, to be that mom, and to be that career person.
okay.
And so that
So
carry it could resist, right? It could come up against any challenges and be able to overcome.
yeah. And I know you could teach this in your sleep. That's the beauty of this, is that you've taught this so many times, but going into the why, for what is your why? What is your purpose? What is your reason behind it? Why does it matter? Right? Is that kind of the line that you're saying here?
Yes, thank you for bringing me down into a greater detail of that. Yeah,
Okay.
it's finding out, like, it's finding out what do you want, and now why do you want it. So in the example of like somebody being challenged for wanting a lower salary because it makes them happy. Maybe that's what type of artwork they want to do. Maybe that's what this, but they get so much joy out of what they're doing. There was somebody that I heard his story a couple days ago, and he's like, everybody told me go into banking because that's where the money is. And so he went into banking for 15 years and hated it.
Yeah, yeah,
and and would have been happier. So it's the, doing what he's doing now, which is helping people to see what they can do in their life and to be able to love and create through love. But back then, 15 years ago, love, like coaching through love, was taboo, right? Like, love
right,
wasn't what it is
right.
today. It was like, it just had a whole different meaning associated. It was very negative, right?
So yeah, okay. So we're gonna dive into that a little bit. So the choosing what you want to do based on, I mean, taboo can affect that. If you're looking at society and you're trying to decide what is acceptable for what you want to do based on society, that might make it a little challenging because you might dive into something that's acceptable but doesn't really align with you,
Right.
right?
And then you have inner conflict the whole time.
Okay.
And
And then you're
so,
not powerful. So if you have inner conflict, you're not going to be powerful.
right, you're going to be having all your energy is going to be on this inner conflict.
Right.
And
Okay.
you'll feel that in everything, right? It's going to come out in wherever in your life. Maybe maybe you could be rocking it in your career, but when you go home, you're feeling empty, or you're
Yeah.
feeling like something's missing, or relationships then suffer because of it. So,
Right, and that definitely would impact everything. I mean, how you feel in one area is gonna impact how you feel in another. How you do one thing in one area is how you do everything, right? And
Yeah.
so the idea there is that if you're not true to what aligns for you, then it's going to be really challenging to show up powerfully. Like you'll show
Right.
up and you could show up in a way that actually would produce, but it's not going to be as powerful as if you showed up aligned. Is that what you're
Right.
saying?
That's what I'm saying. And so, sorry, it's a little warm in here. I don't know. We don't
No,
have
you're
the
good. You're good.
air on. I'm just gonna take this jacket off.
You are in Arizona. Yeah, it's going to be
Yeah.
warm.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I'm saying is just that and it's also the reverse of it too, right? So by not knowing your why, by not going after it, then it pulls you back, it holds you down. It's going to have that negative effect. But also by knowing it, when challenges come up, it's like, okay, I'm doing this because it's so important to me. I'm doing this because it's aligned with what my soul wants to do. I'm doing this because I'm called to it.
Yeah.
Because this is really what's going to light me up on a daily basis.
Right. So, I mean, this comment here, I don't know that I agree with this. Play every lottery that you can if it's all about the money. It's not necessarily all about the money, but that can be part of the creation, right? So, as you're creating the why, that might be one of the reasons that you're doing it. And so, if I look at the process so far, is know what you want, getting clear around that, and then looking at your why behind it. Why do you want that?
Mhm.
How clear do you have to be in order for that to be effective?
Well, I think you have to be clear enough that it moves you, right? So we
Okay.
talked about that moving, that emotion, that's something that's going to like what would it be to carry you? So we did this 5 month RV trip.
Yeah.
And when we did that in this last year, before that, it was like we were coming up with challenges. I mean, COVID was a big challenge, all these things. But my why was that I was never going to get my kids at 7 years old. I was never going to get to experience this world of the trip with them at 7 years old. And that was so moving to me that I
Yeah.
could feel that in my core. Like I was never going to get this again. This was my lifetime opportunity right now to go explore with them. And so no matter what came up, that was more important than whatever the challenge was or whatever somebody
Okay.
said. And so it was like, oh, there's COVID out there, there's this, you're going to get them sick. You're going to do, whatever that
That
was. It was
that wouldn't move you. So if somebody said that, it wouldn't move you off your course.
no, because I was, like, determined that this is where I was gonna go, and we were gonna live it, and we were gonna, of
Yeah.
course, be safe, but that was my why, and so it carried through, like, even the next challenge, we didn't have the RV when we even made the decision to go do this. We didn't even have the truck. We had
Right,
to
right. But you had the
up
vision
here.
of what you wanted, right? So you had the vision of what you were gonna create, and it moved you, and then from there, you had your why behind that. That why is what moved you and kept
Yes.
you in action. And
Yeah.
so now I'm curious about what's next. What's the 3rd step? Like,
The third step is to evaluate what's the fear. What's the fear that's going to hold you back? And so this is a step that's often overlooked by anybody. So a lot of times, what we fear is fear of judgment. We're fearing failure. We're fearing of being wrong.
yeah,
Right. So if I go out and I start this business, what happens if I don't succeed?
right,
I don't know. I could go get another job. What does it really mean?
right.
Yeah, and so it's being able to, and it's a really simple step of what I can do for that is like I'll just take a piece of paper and I'll write what it is that I want on the left side. And then on the right side, I'll write what is holding me back? What's the fear? And it's really interesting because when I did that, especially for the RV trip,
Yeah,
the first thing that came up was the money, and it was related to old money beliefs and thoughts. But it was so surprising that that's what came up. And when I saw that, it was like, no, 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 no. We've been working on these money beliefs for a long time now. This is not going to be the one that takes me out, right? So what
right.
that does is when we can identify the fear, and it could be anything, but once we identify the fear, now we can we're aware of it. So bringing that awareness has all the power to change it. We can't change anything if we're not aware of it.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, we talk about that in the book. The 12 journeys, one of them is unconsciousness, and the next journey in the journeys is awareness because like you said, without it, there's nothing to do because you don't even know what you don't know.
Yeah,
And
so
so
if I would have been like, "Oh yeah, we're just gonna do this for the month trip," or even create these businesses without like understanding that my fear was of failure or my fear was of, the business of like having to go get a job or whatever
yeah,
it would have been at that time, then those would have come up and I wouldn't have been aware of them, just like you said, I wouldn't have known. And so I
right.
wouldn't have been able to deal with them. But once I was able to identify that money was a fear for this RV trip, now when it came up, I was like, "Oh." that's the fear. Okay, how do we work through that? Is that really the case, or is that a limiting belief that is resurfacing?
Okay. Yeah, and if we can dive down the rabbit hole of limiting beliefs, right? So a belief is something that you hold dear, something that's important to you. So a value is something that's important, and a belief is something you hold dear based off that value. And so when it comes to money, you could have a belief, a limiting belief that keeps you from growing because what you hold dear is something that says that money is scarce or limited or unavailable. And that's a belief. And so it holds you back from reaching your potential. Is that kind of, I mean, what comes up as you hear that?
Yeah, so
Or
like
how
our
would you
thoughts,
define it? Yeah.
yeah, I just think of like our thoughts go kind of get grouped into these belief systems. So for
Okay.
me, it's like we don't have, like I grew up with, we didn't have money. And that's something that I still carry and like have been shedding.
Yeah.
We, and so that comes up of like, we're going to do this RV trip, but we don't have money. So like that surfaces, right? And so it spawns all these little thoughts throughout the, like, well, where are we going to get the money for the truck? Where are we going to get the money for the RV? Where are we going to get, it comes out with those. So I think when someone can be aware, and maybe they don't know their grouped beliefs of it, but when they do the exercise still, it would be like, what do I want and what's holding me back? Well, they could be fear, like I won't earn enough, I'm the
Right.
breadwinner,
Right.
things like that. So either way, it's going to surface something that they'll be aware of, that when those start, they can either start planning and put some things in place to be able to avoid that, or when it does surface, be able to handle it in that scenario.
Yeah. So as I think of your trip as an analogy, right? So if you're going on an RV trip, you're going to go through your closet and you're going to pull things out and you're going to look at it and you're going to either keep it or you're going to shed it. You're going to get rid of it. So you said there are certain beliefs that you carry or you shed, right?
Mhm.
And some of them you carry forward, you take them with you and they benefit you and they serve you. And then there's others that you just got to drop off. And so when
Yep.
you're looking at your beliefs, it's the same idea. There's no problem with you picking it up and looking at it or for it even being present. It's just, it is present. So it comes up for you. So determining whether you want to keep that and hang on to it and let that determine your actions, I can see how that would be valuable, or whether you would just drop it, just like a sleeping bag. I don't need this. So you just chuck it.
Yeah, and it's easier said than done, right? So it's like
Yeah.
gotta
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
like, because then it comes knocking back on the door, or
Yeah.
it just
Yeah.
like surfaces in the closet, and it's like, "Wait, I threw you out."
It's
Um,
not a tangible thing. So that's where the challenge is it will keep coming up.
yeah, and
So
and
yeah.
that's where, again, that why is so important, because when that why, you want that why to be so moving that it's going to be what's going to resist or to overcome something like the fear, and then being able to understand that the fear is what we're creating in our mind, right? A lot of times we
Yeah.
imagine
Yeah.
the worst catastrophe,
Yeah.
and it's pure imagination. And with the why, the other thing that the why does is it creates it from interested to committed.
Mm.
So if you're really clear on your why, it doesn't, interested is like if it's convenient, right? Like if it's convenient for, me to go out and get this business. If it's convenient, then then great, that's along. But we know that there's so many challenges in going
Yeah.
after what we really want. And so when we're clear on that why, it gives us that sense of commitment.
Yeah.
So that's just another little distinction on that
So
one.
I'm going to have you define commitment as the way you use it. So a lot of people hear the commitment, they think agreement. The commitment is the agreement. But if you could define for us what commitment means to you
I think
versus
commitment, yeah.
interest.
Yeah, so commitment is showing up regardless. So showing up for what you want, and making it happen.
Yeah.
Showing up and
Okay.
making it happen regardless of the challenges. So there are no excuses. There's, how do we make a lot of what I do in life is like when I hit a challenge, it's like, okay, what do I do now? Where's the point? Like, I don't really sit. I mean, sometimes, I mean, I'm human. Sometimes I
Yeah.
can sit in it for a second, but it's like, how do we move forward? What's the next thing? What do I got to do? How do I get over this?
Yeah. Yeah. I think of Steve Chandler's got a great definition for it. He says it's whatever you do. Like you don't, you go into a bank. If you were a bank robber, you would commit a robbery and it would be what you did. And so commitment is that thing that you do. So whatever you're doing is what you're committed to. It's not just what you're saying, it's what you're doing. And so you can tell what you're committed to by what you're doing. And
Yeah,
so if you're interested, there's a lot of things that are interesting. I might read about all kinds of things, but never do anything with it. So I don't become committed until I'm actually doing something with it. And
exactly.
so I would question now, like, how does your way of being affect what you're doing? Like, how does your being affect your commitment, I guess is the
Yeah,
question.
I think if you're really into it, then you're going to be taking action, right? Which is one of the
Right.
later steps.
Okay.
And so if you're if yeah, it's just your being would have to be, right? If you're I guess
Yeah.
I would look at it as being interested. Oh, okay, that's nice, or that doesn't work out right now. If there's a challenge, then it's like, okay, well, I'm just going to drop it. I'm going to let it go. I'm going to
Yeah.
go the other way. And that's where a lot of people get hung up on because they don't have that why that's so convicting to themselves. Such a strong thing that that's where when the challenges come up, they let it go or they let their dreams sit on
Well,
hold for X.
it doesn't matter what it is either. I mean, that might be money, that might be relationship, that could be anything. So you can find out, like, it's so easy when you're just interested to back out. Like, I'm just interested, I'm not committed, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where you get to make a decision on what you're committed to, and that goes back to your why, like you said. And it's hard to get to your why if you don't really feel the vision. And so I can see where all these steps are necessary because you've got to take one after the other. Otherwise, it doesn't play out. You don't get to that commitment level. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's very accurate. And it's also, if somebody, let's just say that somebody thought this was their why, and then they
Yeah.
get into something. Like
Yeah.
for the longest time, I was like, oh, I want to work out and get in shape. Right. And I subscribed to gym memberships and then was just donating money, not going because I'd put it off to the next day
What
or
I
the next
That's
day.
what I
Right.
do. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
For years. And I'll be like, oh, I should cancel that.
yeah, I become a donor. I was a donor for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and it was when I look at that, it's because my why was like, "Oh, to get in shape or do something," but I didn't that really wasn't my why, it wasn't something that moved me, and so that's
Right.
how I could put it off. And so for something like that, then I build in a system. So now I have a trainer, well, not at the moment because 'cause I'm healing, but,
Okay.
that was
Yeah.
coming twice a week to and so I couldn't push that off, so now I have a different kind of commitment, like you said, like an agreement, so you can
Right.
build in
Right.
things like that. But if somebody did have something in their life that they started feeling like that they were seeing that they were playing out more interested, where if it wasn't working or if there was a challenge or they're putting it off, then they can go back to their why. So it's very simple to go back to the next step, say, hey, this isn't working. Let me go. Instead of just giving up on the dream or letting it sit there, they can go back and question their why. And it brings such clarity too, because it's like, oh, or if this is really what I want, like did really want to work out, then it's like, now how do I bring in accountability for that?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, so this question that's up right now says, does your why need to align with your values or to your values? And my view on this is that our values are relative, they're subjective, that we get to decide what we value, what's important to us, and then our why stems from whatever that is. So that can be different for every person. And then you get into ethics and morality and things like that, and that's where we get muddied is because we want to compare our values to somebody else's values and try and create from that. And then we don't fully commit to our why because it doesn't fully align with society's reasons. And so there's that conflict. It goes back to that conflict that you're talking about. You can't fully align if you're in conflict.
Yeah, it would align to somebody's values if you're really if that's your true why. If you're not aligned to your values, then that's not your true why,
Huh.
right? So somebody that values being of service and caring and something else, and they're in a say a position that is like very using people or selling the wrong
Yeah.
thing or presenting a different product, they're going to have a total conflict inside, and then it's not going to work out, just like you described.
I think of the prison population as an example, right? Their commitment, some of them, is to a certain thing that to us on the outside we would say, well, that's wrong, right? But to them, they're committed to that. That's their value, and so in their world, they're actually right. And so they create their beliefs and their actions and behaviors off of that value, and that becomes their why. And as a society, we step back and we say, yeah, that doesn't really work because that causes harm,
Yeah.
right? But they're basing it off of their values. So in a way, they're in integrity with who they are. Does that
Yeah,
is
yeah,
that
and they
accurate?
could have a why so powerful, like they're providing for their family, and so they're out doing
Right.
whatever this is, whatever
Like the
that is.
Robin Hood mentality, right? Like,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. But as a whole, morality and ethics, that's where we step back and we say, ethics is more of the social acceptance, and then morality is individual, what we hold true as our values. Um, But man, until you really align with, like you said, with your values, whatever those are, you're not going to be as powerful.
No, I
Yeah.
don't think so because of that conflict. You're just wasting energy. Energy is gonna be spent. Um,
Okay.
and it's gonna things will seep out where if you're unhappy or there's conflict, they're gonna seep out in either relationships or,
Right.
come home and you're dissatisfied, then it's gonna be snappy or,
Right. 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 And then you can blame it on something else. You're like, I'm going to put it over there. But
Yeah.
I want to talk about, because we talk about values and commitment and agreements. So if I'm looking at an agreement and a commitment, agreement is what you say you'll do. A
Mhm.
commitment is what you're doing. And I learned this from a gentleman named Townsend Wardlaw, that integrity is the delta or the difference between the two. So what you say you'll do in the world and what you're actually doing, the integrity is the difference. And so
Mm,
if what you say you'll do is what you do in the world, you're in absolute integrity. But if there's a difference, it's not a shameful thing like you're out of integrity or you're a non-integral person. It just means that what you say you'll do and what you do are two different things. And so working to get in alignment with what shows up in the world versus what you say will be in the world. Does that make sense?
yeah, I just think about it as like, we have a value in our company and in our family as we honor our word. So we do
Yeah.
what we'll say we'll
Okay.
do, and the minute that we know we cannot fulfill that, then we go
Yeah.
and clean it up. And so that creates a lot of personal power. I mean, I work with people all the time to if you wanted to change one if you wanted one area that you can increase your own personal power, it's start noticing where you're doing something different than what you say you're going to do and
Yeah.
start cleaning that up. And so cleaning it up means like if I told you, "Hey, Nick, I'm going to do this by this time," and then I realize I can't do that, then I'd have to come and say, "Hey, Nick, I'm not going to be able to do this anymore. How can we correct this?" Or, "I'm sorry didn't fulfill this, and how can I make it better?" Kind of thing. And that's a
Yeah.
hard thing to do because a lot of times in our society, it's like, "Hey, I'm not going to do this," or people just let it pass by, and then the other person says, "Oh, it's okay." Well, it's not really okay, right? And it's like the asking of like, what can I do to make up for this inconvenience in your life? Like something like that. That's a
Yeah.
very hard thing to it puts that personal accountability.
It really does, because you've got to go back and look at your word and then clean, like when you say cleaning that up, it's aligning your word or creating a new agreement or canceling the old agreement, or in some form you're cleaning it up, and you're
Right.
doing that with the other person that's involved in it, and so who's affected by it. And so that's where the cleaning up is powerful. I've had to do some cleaning up in my life, and it wasn't easy. I mean, mentally it was costly, and I lost a lot of sleep. I was scared. I was anxious, worried about what the other person might think. But it allowed me to heal the relationship with that person and then move forward in a new way, sometimes in the old way, right? But
Yeah.
I think, where you're not in integrity, there's that chance to go back in and clean it up. If you break something, do your best to fix it. And if you can't fix it, find another agreement that works for both of you.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
accurate?
Yeah, it starts making things move in a direction when you start being your word. Like more things will start aligning.
Yeah.
And it looks like, oh, that's part of the universe or they're just falling into place. No, we have a big part of that into the energy that we're carrying throughout and how clean that is, right? That integrity delta that you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you were to do a quick recap, because we're going to go to break here and we'll take a 2-minute break and then we'll come back on and finish out the other steps. But if you were to do a recap of the first 3 steps and just kind of summarize for everybody that maybe is just catching up, can you do that?
Yeah. So the first step is to really get clear on what it is that you want. I go through the 5 whys, get to something, whatever it is that you want that moves you. And then the second one is to find out why. Why do you want that? So in my case, I use the example of like, I wanted to create a business, but why was that? And it's because I wanted to have built in freedom for myself that I could be a mom and as well have a career that I was in charge of or in control of, and that was enough to carry me through. And then the third one is to really look at what it is, what I just described, and what's the fear on the other side. What would hold me back? What is holding me back? And it was fear of failure, right? In the case of like going after a business or starting it. And so I have to be able to have that awareness, because once I have that awareness or you have that awareness, now when it arises, you have something to work with and what you can do to overcome those obstacles.
Yeah, beautiful. And so as we go into commercial break here, For those that are catching up, we've got Abigail Olaya on the show on Wake Up with Giants Radio. If you're just joining us, we're going to take a quick pause and we'll be back in just a bit. So we're just going to chat now. Ryan's going to join us.
All right.
And we've got about a 2-minute break here between now and the next. Is there something, for those that are on social media, we're still live. But I'm wondering in the comments if you guys can put some ideas on things that you want to know from Abigail around this, around creation for yourselves. Like, what is it specifically maybe that you're working on? And what would you want to ask if you could ask anything right now? And is there anything that you want to share? Maybe Abigail? Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah, it's good to see you.
It's good to be here.
I'll lean back on you, Abigail.
Yeah, I think it's all creation, right? So just looking at it from like the whole topic of what we're talking about, how to create the life of your dreams is really, what are you creating? So I see Steve is asking.
Yeah.
Well, I can share who I am.
Yeah, let's do it.
I have my declarations that I work through on a daily basis, and this is who I'm showing up as being. I am a positive light. I am God's grace. I am healthy, pain-free, free of limitations. My body is strong and self-healing. I am the most loving, caring, nurturing, supportive, and patient mother to my children, Audrey, Ava, and Adelina. We share a special and irreplaceable bond. I am grateful my children are so loved and cared for. I am present. I'm highly intuitive, extremely knowledgeable, and what I say positively contributes. I am at peace with my heart, mind, body, and soul. I'm committed to living my life to its fullest. I am worthy of notice. I am free of pain and suffering. I am flooded with favor. I am a daughter, sister, wife, mother, friend, businesswoman, and confidant. I am Abigail. I am love.
That is beautiful. I want to do mine now.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. For those that don't know what that is, a declaration statement, a creation statement of who you are declaring and creating yourself to be on a daily basis. And the greatest opportunity for growth is where you are not those things, right? The distinction, the difference, the delta between what you say you're creating yourself as and what you are not. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
So if you're good, I want to dive in.
Yeah.
So I am giant. I'm the mystical giant. I'm salmonic action. I am grateful in my highs and graceful in my lows. I am the infinite knowledge and abundance flow through me. I'm a powerful, inspiring, and confident leader and teacher. I am that I am confident in any situation and with any person. I am that no one is worthy of my judgment, only my love. I am loving kindness. I'm forgiving of my judgments. I am that I create as much money as I want, whenever I want, easily and effortlessly. Peace is my birthright. I am that my relationships are fulfilling, loving, and easy. I am my word. I do my best to do my best. I live every moment to the fullest. No one is more committed than I am. I am that I can create anything I imagine. I am one with the universe, and all that the universe has is mine to serve my needs, my wants, and my desires, and those are the people that I serve. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, but only always. And my timing is always perfect. And my mother named me Nicholas Townsend Smith.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, I love it. Let's dive back in. Welcome back to the show. I'm Nick Smith, joined with Ryan the Lion Morris and Abigail Olaya on Wake Up with Giants Radio. Today we are talking about the secret to creating the life of your dreams. And we left off on number 3 here. And so we're going to go back in through the final 4 steps if we can. Is there anything that came up during the break that you wanted to share?
No, I'm excited to talk about step number 4. So step number 4 is really about using regret. So like I take regret and I have a distinction of regret versus advancement. And so I take it as, am I going to regret this more than what I'm going to gain from something? So in the case of the 5-month RV trip, coming up COVID, coming up with all these things, would I regret if I didn't take that trip? And I use that to where that's so heavy that it then supports me on still pushing forward with those first 3 things that I talked about. And so it really comes, I'm sure that you may be familiar with the 5 regrets of the dying.
Yeah, go ahead and share it though. I'm
Yeah, well, it was
familiar.
basically
Yes.
a concept of a palliative nurse that she interviewed, people that were on their way to passing and what they had regretted, and it was, like, spending more time with family, not working so hard, that they regretted that they didn't spend more time with family, that they regretted that they spent too much time working, and so
Sometimes I regret I spend too much time with my family.
I
It's
wanted
the
to make I
worst.
Yeah.
heard how that could have sounded. I wanted to make that
Yeah,
clarification.
I would
After an
say, yeah.
RV trip, you might though.
Yeah.
It was all good. So really taking like now we've already worked through what do we want? Why do we want it? What's the fear that could hold us back? And now it's like using that, would I regret this? And on the other side, the advancement is the growth, the lessons learned, what could come up. So sometimes things, come up different than what we originally planned or wanted, but it would still be more in the direction of what we wanted. And if we were to take that risk, it's a bigger risk not to take the risk than to actually take the risk. So using that form of like feeling, thinking into the future, would I regret this? And where have I regretted things before? And I really tap into that as like a final little push to be able to go forward with whatever it is that I want, the creating my dream.
I think one of the 5 to take more chances, like, to risk a little more, to be more adventurous, to get out there. And I think, the idea of regret, of staying where you are, exactly where you are, there
Mhm.
could be regret in staying where you are. Like, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have stepped out, right?
Yeah. And even coming back from the trip, like the 5 months when I came back, it was so surreal. It was like I came back and everything was basically the same, but I felt so there was a disconnect I had the first week. I'm like, "What is going on here?" Like everything it was humming along just as if we had never left. It was
Yeah.
like when I drove down certain roads, it felt like I had driven those the week before, not 5 months, an extensive period. And
Hmm.
so what that proved to me was that life just goes on. It continues. If I would have sat here and like made something so important that I didn't go after it, I would have regretted not taking that trip because again, my why was to have that time period with my 3 girls at 7 years old and exploring the world, and and whatever was on the other side, just getting to see the other side. It was like, wow, it's and what I realized was, yeah, things were still pretty much the same, but I had expanded,
Yeah.
right?
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Speak to that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I had
Yep.
changed. I had went out and explored and experienced this world, and I came back and I started seeing where I was settling. I didn't settle for big things in life, but I was settling in like a plateware set that like my husband wanted to replace, and I'm
Yeah.
like, "Why? It's practical for us to keep this one. It's not broken." Like you like I started realizing, like we came back and celebrated our anniversary, and at the resort, I had actually touched the silverware and kind of just felt it, and it was like just a quality, like a nice heavy silverware, but I didn't know I wanted that. And we were eating off paper plates majority of the trip. So it's not
Yeah.
that. It's just that I came back and I started leaning into like when I was in the store and I saw a silverware set that I wanted, I went ahead and got it. I didn't like talk myself out of these little things that I had been settling on. And it just started growing from there. Like we had been looking to move for 2 years. We just moved last weekend. And then now opportunities started coming up where we were putting those down before because we were in a different mindset. Well, I should speak for myself. He was
Yeah.
ready.
Yeah.
He gives me so much space. But yeah, it came back and I wanted to start shifting and moving things to catch up to. I experienced this world of experiences. I was experiencing an experiential life out on the trip. And I was like, how do I bring that into my daily life here?
Yeah, okay, so I'm having a thought around this as you're talking about that. You go on a vacation, you go on a trip, you step away from your life the way you know it. You're able to get a break and some space from it. You come back to it and you settle back into the old way of being. And so where there was some growth and some change, you come back into it. There's an initial discomfort, but then we have this tendency to settle back in and put on the old things, put on the old clothes, the old ways of being, and it would have been easy for you to settle back into the old silverware, the old dishes, right? And this as an analogy is perfect because too often we rise above where we currently are and then we settle back into where we currently are. And then there's no movement and then there's frustration. It's like, wow, I've seen bigger and better for me, but now I'm just fitting back into the old clothes. It'd be like me going back and putting on my 4-year-old clothes. It'd be ridiculous. It'd be uncomfortable.
Yeah, yeah, but we do it all the time, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that was the thing, is that I got back, and then which actually takes me to step 5, and step 5 is speaking it into the world. So that's
Mm.
how we ultimately create, is when we speak things into the world. So we've already gone through all these steps. We've already gone through in the process in our mind. We've gotten clear. We know what we're after. We know what could hold us back. We know whether that we have that push to move forward. And now we start speaking it out. And so when I started speaking things out, that's when the universe started being able to work in my favor, right, to help things there, like things started showing up. And it's because I got clearer on that, and I started saying it, but it also, by me saying it, it also made it clearer for my mind. Now my mind's searching for those things, right?
Yeah.
So it was like, I went and I did a live, and it was part of the process I was sharing when I got back. Like, it's different now. I'm traveling and taking the girls to school. It was like an hour drive the first week just to get there. Then I had to do a 40-minute to hour drive back. So I was spending like 8 hours a day on the car just to take them to the school that we wanted, but we wanted to move closer. And I started speaking that out there. And it was like, now I was on a mission to make that happen, because
Okay.
I made it real. It wasn't like I could talk myself out of it with the fear or whatever. It wasn't like I could be like, but it's okay. Maybe that was just traffic the first week. And it was giving me more gumption and that integrity piece of doing what I said I was going to do, right?
Yeah.
Closing that gap. When we start speaking things out, and people would also start asking me, hey, how's the home search going? Or how's this? Or are you really going to move?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And they start declaring it, and it starts creating momentum. So speaking it out into the world is a huge part of creation. I mean, that is the creation.
Well, and then preparing to receive it. I think of the word prediction, right?
Mhm.
Prediction is what occurs before we speak it into the world. So it's prediction. And so before we speak it, we're playing it through in our mind, like you said, in step 4, is we're going through and we're taking the values and belief systems that we currently hold and the habits that we currently hold, and then we're acting on those and perceiving the world the way that we think it is based on that. And then we predict from there. Everything that we do is a prediction. So we predict it into the world. So before we speak it into the world, we're predicting it. And then once we speak it into the world, it becomes a creation, and it doesn't matter what it is. It could be positive or useful or unuseful. Whatever you speak into the world pretty much becomes your reality. Is that how you've experienced it?
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, just think about somebody that, like, maybe complains and that you've been associated with, like, there's
Yeah.
somebody in my life, oh, I work so hard. Always working. I work so hard. And I'm like, not that that's not real, but they can't experience anything different because that's the lens that they're seeing it out of,
Right.
right? It's that, and or vice versa. Like, I mean, I said we just moved and we did a lot of things. And so, yeah, it is a change, but I knew that going into it, right? And it's not like I don't experience that, but I have a choice on a daily basis. Okay, I'm already here. It is a change. Things are different. How am I going to speak this into the world? Like, oh, it's annoying that we moved. Oh, I wish we didn't move. Oh, like,
Right. Right.
or
Yeah. And
is
that,
it like, yes, it's different, and this is what we wanted, you know?
yeah.
This is what we wanted. People ask me, how's the drive to school now? Oh, it's amazing. Because it is. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
5 minutes. That's
Well,
a big
so
difference.
it's hard to know what you're saying if you don't know what you're saying. So that unconsciousness, that awareness is really important. If you're not aware of what you're speaking into the world and you're talking about these creations that you have, but you're speaking something different, but you're not aware of that, then it's going to be really hard for you to change. You're going to be shocked that you want one thing in your mind, but you're speaking another into the world, and that becomes your reality. So you just run into this frustration if you keep speaking into the world this thing that frustrates you. And so creating that awareness is going to be one of the primary steps, is to just pay attention to what you're saying and speaking into the world, because it's powerful. Like Ryan posted abracadabra, the word means what you speak into the world becomes reality. There's
Mm,
also avaracadabra, which is the opposite of that, is what you speak into the world becomes destroyed in reality. It
mm.
gets taken out of reality. And so your words are powerful. They're magical.
How about people that have, like, they're so scared to think thoughts because they think that the thought is going to become their reality
Are
or
you
the
talking
thing?
about Ghostbusters right now?
Yes, yes, yeah, totally. You, gosh,
Yeah.
you got me. No, I was just thinking about, like, there's people that think, oh, well, my thoughts become things,
Yeah.
which can be true, but then they're so worried about having emotion or feeling something. Like I have negative thoughts all the freaking time. I don't act on them and I don't speak them. I try not to speak them into the world. Sometimes I'm still human, but I think that there's maybe a distinction there where it's as those come up, then what do you do with those? Does that make sense to anybody else? What I'm trying to
Yeah,
throw
I
down?
get it. Yeah,
You get me.
I get you.
Well, I think what comes up for me is I think about like this circle diagram, and it's like our thoughts create our beliefs, right? Like, what are we ultimately believing? So if they keep having these negative thoughts and they really believe they're going to occur, then that's going to drive our feelings and drive our actions and then create our results, right? So it's just like this
Yeah.
circle. And I think that somebody would have to be aware, and a lot of it, I mean, I know for a portion of my life, like I wasn't so aware as I am now of that cycle, right? Like I ended up it worked out really well for me, and sometimes, and then other times not so much, until I became aware of like, oh, I'm the creator through my thoughts. And so I don't know,
Yeah, I've got a
I'm
further
answering your
thought on that.
question.
No, that was perfect because
Yeah, that's
we
great.
have 50,000 to 70,000 thoughts a day, right? Our beliefs are thoughts that we hold dear. So it tells us what to pay attention to. There's too many thoughts for us to do anything with, 50,000 to 70,000. So our
Yeah,
beliefs come in and say, these are the ones that are important. And those beliefs are based on our values. So our beliefs create our perception because we're pulling from the thoughts. It tells us what to pull in. And then from there, we're predicting. And then from there, speaking. And then from there creating into the world. And so does that lead into the next step here, or is there still more to say around that?
well, I think the thing that what I'm hearing you saying, and so like what for the people that weren't with us on the break, is that you and I both declared who we are in the world. We said who we are, and that's exactly what you're saying right now. Is that we are out there and we're speaking it, and that's what's creating it. And so if we're intentional for somebody that wants to change anything in their world, I think just take like one or two thoughts, like what is it that you want to change, transform that into what you want it to be, and then be intentional about speaking that to yourself or speaking that out into the world. Even if it's just to like what I said about my kids, like, yeah, sometimes I let things get the best of me, and then I go to bed with mom guilt of that I could have been more patient, or I could have been, less tempered, or whatever it is. And then at the same time, I'm like, no, I am the most loving, caring, nurturing, supportive, and patient mother to my children, Audrey, Ava, and Adelina. And I get back, and that gives me,
You
I'm not saying
realign.
one day I'll be that. I'm saying I am, and and then it gives me the ability to get back up and be that, because I'm already declaring I am that.
Well, when you talk about intention, right? Intention comes from the word intendere, which is Latin. It means to stretch toward. And so if you were stretching towards something, here's the thing is like, if I want to touch my toes and I can't get past my knees, right? I'm going to tear something and I'm not going to like stretching so much. And so to intend, like you said, one or two things, some small steps, some small stretches, stretching toward what you're creating yourself as. And when you're not, to remember and remind yourself to step back into it just in little ways can go a long ways. It can create giant changes in your world just with these small intentions, these small stretches toward what you say you're creating into the world.
Right.
I love that.
Cool.
So,
Well, the next step is take one tiny action, even if
mm,
it's a tiny action. It's like a lot of times what I have found or seen is that people think of like, okay, I'm here and my dreams are, I'm just using numbers, simple numbers, for example. My dreams are 100 steps away, right? To actually get to my dream. Well, just take what's the one next tiny action that you can take today, whatever that is. And then think about the next one and then the next one. And before you know it, because by the time I get to step 20, I don't need to worry about step 20 right now. I'm on step, I can maybe look at
yeah, yeah.
1 through 4. So it makes it into manageable chunks and manageable pieces where we can process that and avoid feeling so overwhelmed and undertaken by like this goal that's so far out there. Right.
So,
So it's kind of going back to that what I just declared for myself with being a mom to my children is that I don't have to worry about like one day I'm going to get there, but I'd have to stop being impatient and I'd have to never yell and I'd have to, right? I'm not trying to think about all the million steps of whatever that perfect thing is or that dream is. I just need to take one action, and that's going to carry me along the way.
yeah, I think of Grant Cardone, right? The 10X rule. It's like, no, I don't want to do the 10X rule. I just want to do one step. Like I'll do one push-up today, one sit-up, one jumping jack. That'll be enough. But what's surprising is once you do one, then you want to do another. It's like you give a moose a muffin, those little books. You give a moose a muffin, it wants milk. And you give it milk, and it thinks of ice cream. And then it thinks of ice cream, it wants a party, right? And it compounds on itself. I think of Mandelbrot when he says that by small and simple equations, complexity arises. It's that when you do things and you repeat them, so simplicity repeated creates complexity. And so you increase in capacity. You go on this trip and you come back bigger in your world than you were when you left. And it wasn't some huge thing. It was just that it was self-similar in the idea that you were doing similar things, but you expanded out. So when you came back, you no longer fit in the old way of being. Right. So trusting that process. Go ahead.
I just like buried your face with a Steve Hardison comment.
I'll move her up here where I'm at.
Yeah, move her and I'll get covered up.
Yeah.
So thinking about like your comfort zone, and you're out here and taking that one little step, then your comfort zone gets a little bit bigger. And you don't have to worry about the goal. I don't know. Usually I like drawing on a whiteboard, but I don't have that available for me right now. But, just think about like what you're talking about, that comfort zone, one step, next step, just a tiny bit out there. And before you know it, you're the giant, right?
Everything in nature grows that way. Everything in nature grows that way. And to remember that for your creations is huge, because you look at the rings on a tree, it didn't just become a tree. It became a tree ring by ring by ring. You look at Romanoff broccoli and the self-similarity of the broccoli, and that every single piece looks the same as the other, but as it expands out, it's just complex and beautiful. But like you're saying, it's those simple steps expand. You are not the same. You're not a baby anymore, right? Like none of us are babies anymore.
Yeah.
And we didn't really have to do much about it other than to take small steps every day and eat and do other things. And it just naturally occurred that way.
Yeah. And consistency, right? So that's where we're talking about. That compounding, it's going to give you that consistency, and the consistency we know is what's going to produce the results, getting greater results over time. So
I think that's a beautiful addition to it, because that consistency, that adding to it daily and daily and daily, even though it doesn't feel like there's any change in your world, that staying with it, that grit. We had a show about a week ago on grit, right? And resiliency and bouncing back and just staying with it. Grit is that being willing to break it down to its finest part, and just stay with it all the way through to the end. That's powerful, because a lot of us give up way too early. We don't want to suck at something long enough to get good at it. And so we give up.
Well, and if we have those first steps, then it'll carry it. That why will carry us through for the giving up, right? And if we have that awareness of the fear, then it's like, oh, I see you. I know what this is, and so we can come back. So all these steps lead exactly to like avoiding that giving up. When you get into the action, the action, if we do all of it and we don't take any action, which is step number 6, you don't take any action, then what was the point? Like we're still in dreamland, right?
Yeah.
We haven't done anything to bring it to fruition. So we've got to take that tiny action.
So now we're close to running out of time. So let's jump into step 7.
Well, step 7 is the easiest. It's have faith, right? Yeah. And so it can sound like, but truly, I mean, like how many things in our world have worked out when one door closes, being open to seeing what's the next door, right? And creating our own doors at the same time. But like what I found in my life is when, even in the darkest of times, when I thought it was like despair, the most beautiful thing came out much later. And it's almost like I feel guilty looking back on like, for a long time, for over 10 years, we hadn't conceived. And then we end up with triplets. Right. And so it's like, I didn't have to be worried about time. I didn't have to be worried about like,
and the timing was perfect, right?
Yeah. Timing was perfect.
You and made so up for it all in one shebang.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So just really having faith in, like, I think the faith part comes into like knowing that you'll be okay, knowing that it's all going to work out, however it's going to work out, and it's going to be beautiful. Right. And so that takes away that fear. It takes away that like imagining so much in like, what if this isn't, it's like, it brings it into the imagining of like, what if it's even better? What if something great's going to come out? And so like when you combine all of these 7 into the mixture that it is, then it just creates where someone can really go after, and no matter what comes up, they can hit it straight on and overcome and be the giant that they want to be in their life, create that dream.
One of the things we talk about in our trainings is salmonic action. And I made it up as a term just from the salmon. The salmon have the ability to stay perfectly still in the roughest of waters. They create a vortex around them and they won't move. And they don't have to move their fins or anything. They just won't move. And then at the moment of opportunity, they shoot lightning speed upstream toward the danger in a lot of cases. And so salmonic action is that ability to just sit still when life is rough and it feels like things are flooding around you. Steve Chandler said that even a dead fish can float downstream, right? Can swim downstream. And so salmonic action is that ability to just hold firm, let things play out, let them just flow around you, and then watch for opportunities. This is part of that having faith, is just holding firm, is having that faith, is don't go downstream with the chaos. Like hold firm for your dreams and keep moving forward when the opportunity arises, because they will arise.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great one. I've never heard of I mean, I knew about the salmon, but how
Yeah.
you're using it, I love that.
So they're a great fish. They go
Yeah,
through a lot to get to where they are. Fishes. So Ryan, what thoughts come up for you as we're getting to the end of the show here?
I like this. I like this comment by Hugh because it's how you're being right now, and how are you? What's it like being Abigail right now today? Can you describe it?
It's amazing. I am so passionate about helping people. And so I feel I'm like on a high right now of being able to know that this is going to serve somebody and share the knowledge of what I've had. And so it just really feels amazing.
I'll tell you what, I know that I've watched a bunch of your lives. I'll be randomly doing stuff around the house and I'll pop it on and I'll turn it up, put you in my pocket, walk around the house. My wife hears it too. And so, but I experience you just like you described in your I am statement. If you don't have an I am declaration, which I need to work on mine apparently now, because we're 2 for 3 tonight. It would have been awesome to go 3 for 3. So that's my commitment. I'm going to work on that. But it was awesome to witness you like that, and that's how I experience you, is
Mm.
exactly as you described, because that's how you're being. So thank you so much for
Thank
doing
you.
that, because you're accomplishing the things that you say you are.
Thank you.
I look at the comments here, and as we're wrapping up the show, I mean, to realize how much value comes out of these conversations that we're having in the Wake Up with Giants TV, Wake Up with Giants radio, is conversations like this, because these are the steps. If you repeated this, if you never watched another video and this is all you ever got in your life, this would change your life. This would be a video that would impact you and you would never be the same by watching it. And that's how all of our other videos are. It's phenomenal. I mean, Abigail's out there creating a change in her world. There's other people. There's 100 other interviews that we've done with people that are doing the same thing, and they have their methods and processes. But if this was all you got was Abigail Olaya's conversation, this would change your life forever. And that's what I love about this dialogue on these shows, is that we get a chance to really dive into your world and your philosophy and then share that. And that's beautiful. So I appreciate you for doing that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate being here. So thank you for having me.
Did you have any other final thoughts before we wrap up here?
Oh, I saw Steve Hardison's comment of how do I manage it with it all, something along those lines. And I want to acknowledge my husband Edward, because he's been my partner in everything. And I think that also really comes into that state of being, and being conscious of that and creating that for myself on a daily basis. So I love that. And I also want to extend to Ryan, if you want to any help with your I am statements, I'd be more than happy to walk through
Yes.
that with you.
That's what I was thinking, and then
Yeah.
I said that, and then the universe delivered. Thank you, Abigail. I appreciate that so much.
You
I
know,
might take you up on that. Actually, I will.
I
There's no
would
doubt about it.
I would do that in a
Yeah.
heartbeat. That's awesome. Do it. For those that are watching, I think of Charles Darwin's statement. It's not the survival of the fittest, it's the survival of the most adaptable to change, right? We're in an era of change. And so when you can adapt to that and take these principles and implement them, you're going to see differences and changes in your life. And if you just hang with the simple steps and do those over and over and over, then you'll see complexity emerge in your life, and it's going to change. It's going to be different. You will not be the same person. So having faith in that, that's what I love, is that final component of faith that just glues it all together, is just trust the process. And that's what faith is just trusting that process is going to play out if you'll take the steps and stick with it long enough for it to play out. And don't give up too soon. So for everybody watching, thanks for being a part of this show. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. We love you. Keep growing as giants and go make it a giant day. We'll see you on the next episode.
Love you too.